couple guys, and they were going up against Team 3D, Devon and Bubba Ray, and it was at Terryville High School, and I'm gonna say like 2006ish, maybe. I don't know how far off I am on that day, that year. Do you remember that event at all, Mr. Dead?
Well, I certainly remember that, Don. And first off, it was a packed house that night. I was on a lot of tours at that point. Northeast Wrestling at that point was treating me very well. They were putting me with all the top stars. They were putting me in the main events. And, I can't thank NEW enough for what they did for my career. I had a long run with them. And that particular event that you're talking about, I was with Oman Tortuga and Diablo Santiago, the legendary Outcast Killers. And we were on a tour in a circuit throughout New England and the Northeast area with then NWA World Tag Team Champions and ECW World Tag Team Champions, Devon and Bubba Ray, the Dudley Boys. And the reason they weren't on our run together, we had a couple of tables matches. We had some tag team title matches with Bubba Ray and Devon. And the reason why they were Team 3D at that point, Donnie, I'm sure a lot of the fans know, they were in the WWE. They got released. They were the Dudley Boys from ECW to WWE, and now that was the likeness. So they came back with Team 3D before they went back in, and obviously to be able to work with Bully Ray and Devon Dudley, and I think the year was correct, Donnie. It might have been a little early. It was towards the latter part of my career. I want to say somewhere between '05, '06. We had a good run. We made a lot of money, and if you remember correctly, we sold out buildings, unlike most of the independents now, and not a shot at the current groups because, listen, I don't care if you're talking about House of Glory, Chaotic, Beyond, Limitless, Northeast, Krieg, Battle Pro, Battlefront. I can go on with all the different groups that run around here, a lot of great groups, quality groups, a lot of quality workers. But going back into the middle and late 90s, into the early and middle 2000s, and even now there's a handful of groups that still do it. You show up, Mr. Kincaid, and you were there to witness it. You go to high school gyms for cards like that, and there's 2,000 people in the building, and that's every show, not just one show. There's 150. The next one there's 5. The next show is 1,200. Then maybe 2,500. This is a consistent $2,000 plus every single show, every single city, every town, double shots, triple shots, or monthly tours. It really was a lot of fun, and that was one hell of a match that night. Kincaid, your thoughts on that? What'd you think?
We're talking, 15, 14 years ago or so, and I went with my dad and my daughter. Now, my daughter, wow, she wasn't really like a per se a wrestling fan, but she liked specifics every now and then, and she loved AJ Styles. Okay. Now that
AJ was there. Was he not there that night?
AJ Styles was there. There was a ladder match. It was AJ Styles, Jay Lethal, and Xavier, the NEW champion at the time, in a ladder match for Xavier's championship.
3 unbelievable athletes. Listen, AJ Styles speaks for himself, but then throw in Juan Xavier. I mean, he was supposed to be inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame this year, but that was canceled along with my producer, Paul Perez. Paul Perez was supposed to go in. But he was unbelievable in that 3-way dance. Go ahead, let me not interrupt, but that was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was part of it, and that was pretty much the reason why she wanted to go was the Dudley Boys and AJ Styles. She loved because she's seen the Dudley Boys more often than not through the WWE days, right?
Right.
Now, my dad, whenever I introduced him to ECW, that guy, Big Daddy, when he was working, because he's retired now, but he would get up wicked early in the morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, easily. And he would go to bed pretty early as well, like 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. But whenever I introduced him to ECW, he would set his MFing alarm clock
So this
on
is
a Saturday night. Yeah. He would set his alarm clock at like midnight to be up for a little while because it was on at 1 o'clock on MSG in our area. And Team 3D, are you kidding me? He loved the Dudley Boys because they were bred from the ECW days, and my dad wanted to go so bad. So
Well,
when we
if you remember correctly, Donnie, and I hate to cut you off, you know I do it
No,
on
no,
the
no.
Chaos Corner, you know I do it on the Mario's Chaos Show, so I'm going to do it here. If you remember correctly, when ECW hit in 94, 95, 96, they really changed the wrestling scene. They were the ones, in my opinion, and what I believe, that turned to make the WWE into having their Attitude Era. They certainly pushed the limits and made the Attitude Era. Now, a lot of different people disagree with me, whether I call in on other shows, on guests on other podcasts, on national radio. They'll disagree with me. I will not disagree. I got a chance to work security when ECW first hit the scene, then transitioned to work with their talent. I worked with the Sandman, Jason Knight, just incredible. The list goes on and on. Tommy Dreamer, Balls Mahoney. To they had a niche in the middle and late '90s into the early 2000s, the hardcore that you still see today, influenced in AEW, whether it was the Kenny Omega Cody Rhodes match or what you saw from the Attitude Era. So Dad was smart. He was onto something because ECW changed this business. So go ahead, Don. I'm off topic.
No, that's quite all right. We like this kind of stuff. It's just a couple guys bantering wrestling, my man. So when we got there, there's a big fight field because there was even Sergeant Slaughter was there, and a couple other talents that are very well known and such. But man, it was like a big fight field at these shows, like you speak of, because they were always jam packed at these schools, and again, to reiterate, a couple thousand people, and you look around, you're like, holy shit, man, this thing is gonna be crazy, So the thing about your specific match is I can't say that I've never seen you work, but I've never seen you work live. I knew who you were, but I never seen you live before because I wasn't really deep into independent wrestling. I was pretty much, the major stuff.
Of course.
So when you came out and you had that fucking sunglass setup thing, and I go, what the hell is going on around here? You had your boys behind you. We knew that Team 3D was coming up, coming out of the curtain after you guys, and I'm telling you, you guys had the crowd, the entire crowd, in the palms of your hands, my friend.
Talk about heat.
Yes. My goodness, what a great, just that match alone.
We had a good run, Donnie.
Yeah.
We had a good run with Bubba and Devon. Fortunately, the promoters put us in a bunch of different cities. And Tortuga and Santiago, the Outcast Killers at that point, one of the rising teams in the early into the middle 2000s, they were phenomenal athletes. So to be programmed with them was unbelievable. And again, it transitioned to when I was working with Jason Knight in a local group here in Connecticut, expanded out to the surrounding states, and being able to work with all the ECW guys, whether it be Chris Candido and Sonny, or the Baldys with Tony DeVito and John Diamond. That's the one thing that maybe we'll get into in stirring the pot here, the different organizations and the territories that I've been fortunate and blessed enough to work with, because the business has changed so much in the different demographics and how I see things today. But we made a lot of money for the promotion and for ourselves, and I'm not going to throw it out there, but just legitimate facts. This is a semi-shoot. When I was working with the Dudleys and working with Tortuga and Santiago and the Outcast Killers, and I'll say it, I really don't care who hears it, who doesn't believe it, who doesn't like it. I personally, as the manager who I was, because I was never a professional wrestler. I trained to be a professional wrestler, but I was never a professional wrestler. I was a pro wrestling manager, modeled in the likes of Captain Lou Albano, Jesse Ventura, combination classy Freddie Blassie. It was under tutelage of everyone from Bill Alfonso to Jim Cornette to Gary Hart to Captain Lou himself. So my gimmick and my character, I took all the bumps. That's why I've had multiple concussions and multiple surgeries. But that's what makes it different. And to be able to be programmed with those guys as a manager, back to my original point to tie this up, I'll dare to say that I probably got paid, and this just is for shits and giggles, just to throw it out there and stir in the pot, more than, with the exception of the Dudley Boys and AJ Styles, the top stars. I bet you I got paid more than 2/3 of the workers that took the regular bumps in that match for what I brought. And all those different times I worked in those main events because the promoters really looked out for me. Whenever I worked all over the country, all over these different promotions, and I could say it now 20 years later, I made more than 2/3 of the roster, unless it was a Kurt Angle or a Samoan Joe or a Christian Cage or, the obvious superstars like that, which I was never fortunate enough to be. But I could say that now, years later. The Guardian of Chaos got paid handsomely, my friend. And if I told you, the boys that are listening to this say, Chaos is crazy. This motherfucker been around for years, 35 years. I tell it like it is.
Now, now there's